Now let's dive into the sweetest place of all time. We had a chance to catch up with the Back 40 Baker. It's the 158th annual Ripley-Huron Fall Fair.
Hi there, I'm Becca Farrell, the Back 40 Baker, and this is Janelle Smeltzer, Director for the Ripley Agricultural Society. And we're two past ambassadors whipping up some goodies in the kitchen today. So we'll be making a couple of recipes from the Ripley Fall Fair book for 2021. The first recipe we're going to start off with are chewy cherry bars. So first we're going to mix together our dry ingredients for the base. So here we have old-fashioned rolled oats that we're going to put in. We have a cup of those. We have a cup of all-purpose flour. 1 cup of lightly packed brown sugar. And then we have 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So we're gonna turn our mixer on and combine our dry things. Next, we're going to add in 1/2 cup of Crisco shortening. And we want it to mix until it's crumbly. So next we're just going to work it in a little bit more to really get that crumbly effect. And we've got our oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got it good and crumbly there. So we've got a 9x13 pan here, prepared with parchment paper. So parchment paper is like a baker's best friend. It's gonna make all of your baking easy to lift out of the pan.
You're doing an awesome job in the kitchen today, Becca. It's really great to be here with you.
Thank you.
So what type of pan is best to use, metal versus glass?
So there are 2 different kinds of pans that are commonly used with baking. So there's metal and glass. With metal pans you have dark metal and light metal. Metal is a great conductor of heat, so it heats up really fast and it cools down really fast. So it's really good for baking recipes with short cooking times. So I prefer to use that. Now dark metal will brown your baking faster than a light metal would. So light metal is most ideal when you're making things like cookies and banana breads and cakes so that they don't brown too quickly. Glass heats baking very evenly, but it's a really poor conductor of heat. So it takes a long time to heat up and it takes a long time to cool down after it comes out of the oven. And it's kind of temperamental. It can shatter if it has an extreme temperature fluctuation. So I like to reserve my glass pans when I'm baking with something acidic like citrus, because citrus can have chemical reactions with metal. So I prefer to use metal pans for my baking.
Awesome.
So we're going to blind bake or pre-bake our crust for 10 minutes. We're just going to put it in the base of the 9x13 and just lightly press it down. And then we're going to pre-bake that for 10 minutes. Okay, so while our crust pre-bakes, we're going to work on the next layer of our chewy cherry bars. So first off, we're going to be putting in 2 large eggs. So we have 2 large grade A eggs there. And then next up, we have 1 cup of lightly packed brown sugar. Following that, we're going to put in, this one is a combination of 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to put in 1 cup of flaked coconut, 1 cup of drained and chopped maraschino cherries, and half a cup of chopped walnuts, as well as some almond extract. Okay, so we're going to work on our middle layer next.
So what is blind baking or pre-baking, and why do we use it?
So blind baking is a process of baking a crust or a base before you put your filling in. So if you made a blind baked pie crust because you wanted to use like a pudding filling or a cream filling that didn't need to be baked again, you would blind bake. So in this case with the bars, we're blind baking because we want a nice browned base on the bottom, and we don't want to bite in and have it raw and soggy because the temperature wouldn't, the cook time wouldn't be long enough on it. So
Perfect.
okay, so we'll go ahead. So we'll put in our 2 eggs first. And 1 cup of light brown sugar. So you want to make sure you stop and scrape down the bowl every here and there because the brown sugar will stick to the sides. And then next we're going to add in our half a teaspoon of almond extract. As well as our combination of flour, baking powder, and salt. We've pulled our bars out of the oven from blind baking, and we're ready to put the next layer on. You can see there, we've got our maraschino cherries filled with coconut and walnut. So we're just gonna put that right on the hot crust. You might have to give it a few minutes to cool down just so that it's more solid for spreading on there your topping. And a great tool to use here is an offset spatula because it just smoothly spreads out your topping. Okay, so we're going to bake that again in the oven for 25 minutes. Okay, so we've had our bars here cooling for a little while to get them down to room temperature so that we can put our icing on as the final touch. So here we have, as the recipe calls for, a 1/4 cup of Crisco shortening. We have 2 cups of sifted icing sugar. We're going to use approximately 4 tablespoons of heavy cream, as well as half a teaspoon of pure almond. Okay, so sometimes the icing sugar can get a little out of control in the bowl when you add it with a paddle beater, but fingers crossed for none of that. So first we'll beat our shortening a bit. our cream. So we're using a clean offset spatula to spread our icing around as well. It just makes a nice finished smooth look here. You may want to chill the bars before cutting into them so that you get a nice clean cut. Hi, I'm Becca Farrell, the Back 40 Baker, and today I'm in the kitchen with Janelle Smelter, a fellow past ambassador for the Ripley Egg Society. And today we're going to be making double chocolate oatmeal cookies from the Ripley Fair Book 2021. So we have our white sugar for the recipe today, as well as brown sugar. We've got 1 cup of melted butter, 2 grade A large eggs. We've got our cocoa powder here, as well as our flour. We have baking soda and salt combined. Our chocolate chips for that extra chocolatey goodness, and our oats for the recipe. Okay, so first off we're going to start by combining our butter and our sugars in the mixing bowl. So first we're adding our brown sugar. And then our white sugar. Followed by our melted butter.
Why is butter temperature so important when baking?
So your butter temperature is really important when baking because it's going to determine the overall texture and density of your finished product. So if a recipe called for room temperature butter, you definitely want to make sure that you went with the room temperature, just because of the way it's going to mix into your recipe. So butter is a solid fat that has the ability to trap air. So when you're creaming your butter with your sugars, it's actually trapping air. And then when your cookie dough is in the oven, that air expands to give you a light, fluffy cookie. Now in this case, we're using melted butter for the cookie recipe.
Yep.
So melted butter is going to give us a very chewy cookie, and everybody loves a good chewy oatmeal cookie. So that's the texture, that's the density that we're going for today.
Perfect.
So next we're gonna add in our 2 eggs. And our vanilla. stop to scrape down the sides. Now you do want to be careful when you are working with a melted butter for cookies, just because if you melt it too much or make it too hot and you add your eggs in, it can bake your eggs before you Okay, so first off, we're adding our flour into the mix. And then our cocoa powder. And we're going to add our combination of baking soda and salt. We're going to mix this in before we put the oats in. Scrape down our bowl once more before we add the final two ingredients, which are our oats and our chocolate chips.
Becca, what is the best type of oats to use and why?
So for this recipe, we're going to use a combination of old-fashioned rolled oats and quick oats. The recipe doesn't specify which to use, and everybody kind of has a different preference for that. So I can tell you a bit about the different profiles of them. So old-fashioned or rolled oats aren't as processed as quick oats. Quick oats, because they are milled that much more and they're finer pieces, they absorb moisture a lot easier, they cook a lot faster, and they're going to give you a lighter, moister baked good. Whereas old-fashioned rolled oats are going to give you a chewier, nutty texture and a heartier product. So, you know, people have different beliefs on what they think should go into oatmeal cookies. I did a blend of 50-50 of each of them so that we could get the best of both worlds with that.
Okay.
With that profile.
Awesome.
So we're going to add in our 3 cups of oats now. And 1 cup of chocolate chips. So here we have our cookies cooling on our cooling rack. We did let them chill for a few minutes after pulling them out of the oven so they weren't as fragile to transfer, and they're all set to go.
Awesome. It was a great afternoon baking with you, Becca. You did a fabulous job. And make sure to check out Becca's Back 40 Bakery business, which is very well known here in the township of Huron Kinloss and spread throughout our area. And also make sure to check out the online website for the Ripley Agricultural Society and also our book that we will be making and sending out to. And when we do have an in-person fair, there is many different competitions that you can enter in for different baking contests, and so make sure to do that with your family.